Hello, my beautiful cuddlebugs. Welcome to Ramblings of a Book Dragon, where we dive into the warmth of good books and unravel stories that feel like a literary hug. I'm Allie, your host, and I'm thrilled to embark on another cozy adventure with you. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, snuggle into your cozy reading nook, and let's begin. But before we do, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so that you won't miss a single episode. I really value your feedback and book recommendations. Now let's get into today's episode. I recently finished Kaikeyi, which was written by Vaishnavi Patel and performed by Sunila Nankani. It follows the story of Kaikeyi from the ancient epic, the Ramayana. We get to the point of Ram's story and ideas of why it was that he was exiled. I thought it was really good. There are some things that didn't quite make a lot of sense to me, but I get what she was doing with it to kind of set things up. Like Kaikeyi, she has this magic that she discovers that she has, and I'm a bit confused by it because like she read this book that had these prayers, and all of a sudden she was able to see the threads of everyone that was connected to her, and she discovered this at a young age because her mother showed her the library, and then not long after that her mother was exiled, not for showing her daughter the library, but because her father, and he's very cold, he doesn't understand women, he's all about his sons, and because she has 6 brothers, and so she's really just relegating women's work like sewing and everything, and she's like, I don't want this, I don't like this. And after her mother's gone, she was kind of lost other than her nanny mantra with her when she's married, which was really nice because it sounded like she needed it. And she learns how to fight with her twin because she convinces him to take her out into the field where she learns how to ride a chariot, and she becomes really, really good at, especially with the chariot, and she learns how to fight and defend herself because that was more interesting to her. And then at one point she's even sitting with other ladies and she's like, I don't like this, I don't understand this. What was really interesting to me as well is she's asexual. Like she doesn't really imagine those things that she hears other ladies talking about with their future husbands. And even when she gets married, she's like, okay, I like you, but I'm not in lust with you. Like she has sex with her husband because she has to, but she's not like, I need you. And I thought that was really, really interesting to have an asexual queen. Like, yes, of course. And so it's just following her life as she grows up. She really learns this magic. She learns how to control the threads, like accidentally loses a relationship with a really good friend of hers because she snaps the thread, and then she learns that once that thread is broken, you really can't get it back. And so she's learning to strengthen those threads that bind her to others and everything. And so she's really learning that power. And then later on we learn that she's God's forsaken. So I'm wondering if maybe it's because of that magic that she has, is her fate has been written essentially. And so they know that she's going to do something big, and she doesn't even know why it is that the gods don't answer her prayers. Like in this world, you have these relationships with the gods, and her country has been blessed by the gods and everything. So like they actually are on speaking terms with the gods when they choose to listen, obviously. But she's like, why doesn't anyone ever answer my prayers and everything? And eventually when she grows up, her father is at first going to have her married off, but then she and her brother are able to convince the king to have this special event where all these princes are going to show up, and they're going to basically compete for her hand in marriage. But it's really not a big to do. Like she still has to pick the man that her father wants for her, but it's still giving her that choice, at least the illusion of choice. But then her father decides, nah, I'm gonna have you marry Dasharath, the king of this more powerful country, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with this. And her brother, and she's like, what, brother, why didn't you help me with this? And her brother is being a man and says that I know what's best for you. You're going to be the 3rd wife because he doesn't have any sons. This is what is best for you. And she's like, no, I wanted to have this event. And he's like, no, it would be too expensive, and it'd be easier with this guy because he's a good man. He has his 3rd wife. I know what's best. And that's a running theme through this book, is the men in this book do not know how to listen. And even with this magic, even with these strings connecting, she's not able to influence them to do this. So before she even gets married to Dasharath, she says, I will marry you, but only if my son becomes the king. And he agrees to this in front of the court. And so she marries him, goes off to the other country. She's able to bring Mantra with her, and because now she's become more of a confidant, essentially. And at first, when she gets to her new home, she falls into this just depression. She wants to stay in her room. She meets the other two wives, but she doesn't really talk to them. She thinks that they're making fun of her because she doesn't have the same style of clothing as them. And she just stays in her room until finally Mantra shakes her out of this and is like, okay, come with me. I want to show you something. So she takes Kaikeyi into the market, where she's able to see like all these other people have lives of their own. And she sees that the stalls are all run by men. And this is something that like I like, but at the same time it's like, okay, this is a modern feminist approach, because she sees that the women don't really have their own voices. Like no one's really listening to the women. No one really cares. And so she's like, okay, I want to do something about this. I want to try to change things. And like I was saying before, like she's sleeping with her husband, but she doesn't really love him. She's not really in lust with him. Like she likes him. He's a good man, but like there's really not much else that's there between them other than this friendship. And then at one point he's like, I'm going to war against this other guy because he's being a warlord and he's trying to take over these other areas, and we need to take care of him. So and he was going to bring a wife with him, and neither of the other two wives want to go. And so Kaikeyi is like, I want to go. Sign me up. Because back home she would ride horses. She knew how to fight. She knew how to throw the spear. That's it. That's the word. She was really good at throwing spears and riding a chariot. So she's like, I'm going to go. And then she proves herself with the chariot, and so Dashrath is like, okay, yeah, you can drive my chariot. And she also has to learn in the new palace how to reconfigure those threads, recreate those threads, because back home she grew up with these people, she knew these people. Here she doesn't know anyone. So she does a really great job with the chariot. She even defends him. She saved his life. He tells her, Kaikeyi, I'm going to give you these two boons. Whatever you want, you can use them whenever you want. That's it. That's the end of it. And so they go home and everything, and none of the wives have any sons yet. Dashrath then decides, okay, we're going to pray to the god of fire. We're going to have this great big ceremony, and we're going to hopefully get us some sons. And so the wives have to go through this whole process of fasting, which is like, oh yeah, that's a great idea to become pregnant after fasting. That's just exactly what the body needs for pregnancy. But then the god of fire arrives, and he blesses the special chalice that has this rice thing in it, and the three wives all take a portion of it, but all three wives wind up miraculously pregnant. And this is when we find out that she's God's forsaken. The gods have turned their backs on her. They don't like her. They don't vouch for her, but she's still able to give birth to a son, which is nice. And so like that's all that drama, and they all give birth to sons. The first wife gives birth to Ram, and at first Kaikeyi is like, okay, I have this magic, I have this influence, but I'm not going to use this on my sons, which is a good idea in theory. Turns out in the reality, it's not such a good idea, because Ram is a god. He is the reincarnation of Vishnu, the avatar of Vishnu, which is where Avatar the Last Airbender comes from. And so, but we don't know this for a while. We just know that the sons are all happy and healthy. These are the only sons that he has, but I mean, he has 4 sons. They all live past childhood, which is great, and everything. And we find out eventually that Ram is a god. The sons are all being taught by this sage, and it turns out this sage is a misogynistic prick, because he thinks that women should be subservient to their husbands, that if they don't want to listen, you should raise your hand to them, and they're whores, they're witches, they're horrible beings, especially because after giving birth to the sons, Kaikeyi is like, oh, we should make this women's council to listen to women in need. And at first it was just something to help with some of the maids, and then they decided, okay, let's help everyone. And it becomes a very powerful court. They help everyone in need, but it's mainly the women. This sage, he hates this, and he infects Ram with this evilness. And once Kaikeyi finds out about this, she's like, oh, no, we need to get him out. we need to do this, because he calls his own mother a whore because she is out doing this women's council business, and she slaps Rom. And she's like, none of them have ever raised hands to the sons, and so she gets really upset about this. Something that I see where her thought process was, like, okay, because later on he threatens to raise his hand against Sita, so she's worried that he learned that hitting is okay. But my thought process is, like, you hit him one time, you immediately apologized. Like, there's all these other things that are going on, all these other influences. Like, she's very good at blaming herself for things, and sometimes as the reader, I'm like, some of this stuff was outside of your control. Like, maybe it didn't help, but I don't think that's the sole reason why he was threatening to raise his hand against his wife. He meets Sita because Sita's father allowed her to have this big to-do where all these princes were competing for her hand. Everything was, and we find out that Ram has been slowly, with or without knowing it, has been using his influence to influence people around him to listen to him. Like, he convinces his brother to, like, he's not nearly as good as Ram, and then he convinces his father to make him king. And in spite of the fact that there was this promise, no one else in her new land knew about this promise. And so when her brother finds out that Ram is to be king, he wages war. He wants to wage war, despite the fact that Kaikeyi is trying to say, hey, don't do this. It's fine. We've agreed to this. It's all fine and dandy and good. He still wants to wage war. And then it's just all this whole great big mess at the end of the book. And because Ram is working up all of the men in the city, like, oh yes, war good, war great. And she's trying to say, like, no, war bad, war dangerous. We don't need to do this. Like, just make my son the king like you had promised. And so she uses her this is how she uses her boons. She uses her boons. One boon to send Ram away for 10 years, because it's clear to her that Ram is actually not ready to become king. He is not ready at all to be king yet. And so to do that, so she wants to send him away to kind of grow up a bit, calm down, get into his godliness, and then make her son king so that her brother doesn't fight, so that they can all just calm down. And that's what that's why she's blamed for sending Ram away, is to basically to stop a war from happening. And so naturally, and so it'd be interesting to read the actual Ramayana to learn what Ramayana says. And we don't really get into Ram's actual stuff outside. Like, we hear stories at the end about what Ram is up to, but it's not really about him. It's about Kaikeyi. So I thought that was all really, really good. And then, like, she really gets into her head at the end of the book. She falls into another state of depression, and then she finally gets up and goes out, and then she sees, oh wait, people are living their lives. Like, she was worried that Ram and his men were going to send the women back to where they were before, but it's like things were progressing outside of all this with the women's council. Like, they were actually helping people, which I thought it was really good and a nice way to kind of bring her back to earth, because she fell into a depression of, oh, woe is me, it's all the end, because her son is like, you're not my mother, and that utterly breaks her heart, which makes sense. Yeah, that's the end of it. I gave this a 4 out of 5 and would definitely read this again. I thought it was really good and highly recommend it. So I think this was really good and highly recommend you listen to it or read it for yourself. I know this was a bit kind of chaotic as per usual, but I hope I gave a good idea of what this book was about. Hope you have a good rest of your day, my beautiful cuddlebugs, and I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.